say this. So we've made Kiddush, which involves, as I mentioned on Thursday, lifting up the cup, elevating the physical, turning it into a spiritual experience. And then it's time to go and wash. Now, most people wash after Kiddush has been made and before Hamoitzi is made. Amongst the Yekis, which are the Jews from, come from German origin, they have the minhag to wash before Kiddush, and then after Kiddush they go straight into Hamoitzi. They begin Hamoitzi straight away.
That's the weirdest thing ever. Can you explain that to me? Why that is?
Well, personally, I think it's just a way of keeping people quiet. Actually, where did the real origin? Oh, you know what? The spiritual origin. Even though it's a pretty good method of keeping the kids quiet, the spiritual origin is that there's not supposed to be any break between Kiddush and Hamoitzi. Right? So according to a minority opinion, if you make Kiddush and then you go to wash and then you go to make Hamoitzi, you've made a break which is unnecessary. Right? So if you wash beforehand, and you've got to keep your mind on the fact that you're involved in the mitzvahs of Kiddush and Hamoitzi, right? There shouldn't be what's called Hesach Hadas between one and the other. So then that's why they wash at the beginning, and then somebody makes Kiddush, and then Hamoitzi is said immediately. There's no break between the two. Yeah. Otherwise, okay, you get up and you wash. How do you wash your hands when you're going to have bread? It's all rather exciting. There are different opinions over here. Basically, what you do is going to be fine, although the person behind me will probably tell you that it's not. You're supposed to fill up a vessel with water. It's something, Netilas Yadayim for eating bread is something which requires what's called koyach gavra, which is it's not enough just to hold your hands under a tap. You need to actually take a vessel and fill it up and then pour that water over your hands. Now, what you'll see being done is variously people washing their hands alternately 3 times. They might wash their hands alternately 2 times. They might wash one hand twice, one after the other, and then the other hand twice, one after the other. I'm telling you, whatever you do, it's going to be fine. The important thing is that a revius of water is poured over each hand. And then, when you come to make the bracha, you should not dry your hands straight away. You should first lift up your hands, and your right hand should be a little bit higher than your left hand, because the right hand is considered to be the more dominant side. It's considered to be the more important side, unless you're left-handed. Is anybody here left-handed?
Ambidextrous.
Oh, you're ambidextrous, that's right. When I was a kid, I used to think that ambidextrous was handbidextrous. And I thought that was kind of cute, right? You could use both hands, so therefore it's handbidextrous. But apparently, when I hit my 40s, I found out that that's not the case, and it's really ambidextrous, and that's not cute at all, actually. But it's still pretty neat to be able to write with both hands, or to use both hands. They say that Rav Chaim Oizer Grudzinski, the leader of Lithuanian Jewry before the Second World War, was capable of writing 2 different letters at the same time, using his right hand and his left hand, which is absolutely astonishing, because even if you are ambidextrous, I mean, your mind, the way that your brain is wired, is I guess so. It's absolutely incredible, really incredible. Huh?
Didn't they say about Weinbach that he could write with like 2 things at the same time?
I may be using the same hand. I don't know. I never saw him using. I never saw him using. I only ever saw him using one hand to write with. He was an incredibly talented fellow, but I don't know. I'll call upon it. Sorry, where did we get onto that? You hold your right hand up a little bit higher than the left hand, and you make the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kishal mitzvosav v'tzivanu, al netilas yadayim, over the washing of the hands. And then you should take the towel and you can dry your hands off. At that point, you're not allowed to speak anymore. Right? Until you either have eaten bread or you make the Hamoitzi blessing yourself, you're not supposed to speak, and you're not supposed to take your mind off of the fact that you're in the middle of this bracha over here. You're in the middle of a mitzvah, right? So the first bracha was made in order to be able to make the second bracha, which is over the bread, which means it's one joint package, and you should not be taking your mind off it. So when you go and you're sitting around the table and like you're sort of like poking each other and giggling and like in all kinds of sign language and all that kind of stuff, you really should not be doing that, right? You should just be sitting there and waiting for somebody to make the Hamoitzi blessing. Yeah.
let's say at a wedding or whatever, and there's loads of pieces of bread around the table.
Yeah.
Should you wait until somebody makes hamotzi? Like somebody,
No.
the main person makes
No.
hamotzi, or can you take?
No,
two
you
by
can
yourself?
take. You can take. First of all, you need to know that if it's anything except for Shabbos and Yom Tov, you do not have to have two challahs or two
Really?
rolls, right? On Shabbos and Yom Tov, we do that. We'll talk about it in a minute. But during the rest of the week, you don't have to have two, which means that if you go to a wedding and you've got a roll on your plate, then feel free to go and wash. You don't have to wait for somebody to make hamotzi out loud, and you
So
can.
you can literally, so you don't have to take the other person's roll.
No,
you can do it over
I
one
mean,
bread.
if you're hungry, you could take the other person's roll. But you could just take your one piece of bread and you can make hamotzi over it. On Shabbos, the process is a little bit different. We have two of whatever it is that you're eating. So either two challahs or two rolls. They don't have to be, they can be two regular rolls. They can be two, I don't know, two baguettes if you are so inclined, I imagine.
Don't mention the war.
Yeah. You've got, and then what happens is like this. You are supposed to make a small incision in the challah. I'm just going to use the word challah because it's simpler, but it doesn't have to be a challah. It can be whatever you've got. It could be a pita, it could be anything, right? But you've got to make a small incision on the challah that you're going to cut first. Now, why is that? Because you've got these two challahs over here, and you're about to make a bracha. You need to know which one you're making the bracha over. It's
You're
not like a
making them
generic
open.
thing, no. But you're going to eat
With
one of them
against
first.
yeah.
Before we get to that, though, you're going to eat one of them first. The one that's being eaten first is the one that you're going to have kavanah to make the bracha over, right? Which is why you make a little incision to know that that's the one that it is. How are you supposed to sort these things out? So here, the thing is like this. Don't ask me to explain it to you because it's Kabbalistic. And of course, as always, I understand this perfectly, but you people are too puny for me to reveal this to you too. It has nothing to do with my complete and absolute inability to understand this. But on Friday night, the challah that you're going to use, the challah that you're going to cut first should be placed on the bottom, and the challah that's not being used first should be placed on the top. The challah that's being used first should be sticking out a little bit, right? Which means that you've got one on top of the other. Don't put them exactly one on top of the other, but make sure that the one on the top is placed a little bit back so that the one that you're making the bracha over is sticking out a little bit. And then you make the bracha, and once you've made the bracha, you then cut off your piece of challah, you dip it into the salt, we'll talk about that again in a minute, and you eat it, and then you cut up the rest of the challah and you send it around for all the people that are waiting. If you've got somebody that you particularly don't want to listen to, so make sure that they don't get a piece of challah.
Why is it a custom to give to the wife first?
Oh, that's something called shlom bayis.
Sure.
We try to retain marital harmony by giving our wives bits of challah before everybody else. Doesn't always work. It's a respect. That's all it is.
Fine. So there's other reasons.
There's no halachic dimension over here. Hold on, just 1 second. I just want to, whilst I'm still remembering this, on Shabbos morning, you reverse the process, which means on Shabbos morning, the challah that you're going to use first is placed on the top, and the challah that you use, the challah that's going to be used afterwards, is placed on the bottom, and the challah on the top, which is the one that you're making the bracha over one, is the one that you make a small incision on, and you bring it forwards a little bit. And when you make the bracha, whenever you're making the bracha, you need to pick up these challahs. You're actually supposed to touch them with all of your fingers. If you have 10 of them, that's great. No, now's not the time to ask your mother afterwards. I'm sure she'll tell you how many you've got.
You can only count them.
You you're supposed to hold them with all of your 10 fingers. You're supposed to lift it up into the hamoitzi lechem in haaretz. So you're physically supposed to lift the things up into the air. And then you, like I said, you put them down and you cut them up and you eat them. You dip them into salt. The salt is there. We spoke about salt, didn't we? The salt is there because everything that was offered up on the mizbeach was salted. Everything that was offered up on the salt on the sorry, not on the salter, on the altar in the temple was salted. Interestingly enough, including the wood offerings. Everything that went up onto the altar had salt. Wood, yeah, there was a couple of times a year when wood was offered up onto the altar. that was salted as well. Unfortunately, we don't have an altar today. We don't have a Beis Hamikdash. We don't have a temple today. However, your table is considered to be, your home is like a Migdash Ma'at. It's like a small temple. Your dining room table is like an altar. And therefore, we add salt and we dip the bread into the salt. This is not just done on Shabbos. It should be done anytime you eat bread. You should be dipping it into salt, except for the period between Rosh Hashanah and the end of Sukkot, where most people have the custom to use honey. However, those that follow the custom of the Chatam Sofer, one of the great rabbis from a few generations ago, so they use salt and honey. The Chatam Sofer is a little bit unsure as to why, just because you're using honey, why the custom not to use salt should not be there. And so in the customs of the Chatam Sofer, they use salt and honey, which is a rather odd combination, actually. Sorry, you wanted to...
the incision that we were talking about for the challah, before you make the blessing over it.
Yeah.
How deep is that supposed to be?
Not very deep at all. The problem is, scratch it.
They make it up to like an inch.
I think scratching is probably the best thing to do. It's got to be discernible. You've got to be able to see it. So now you know that that's the one that you're making the bracha over, right? More than that, you might run into the problem of your challah not being whole anymore. Yeah. Now there's an inyan of when you make we've spoken about this in the past. When you make a blessing over something, if you've got something which is whole, it's considered to be more important. When you make a blessing over the bread should be important. And, like we spoke about once, if you've got all those weddings and they've got these ginormous, wedding challahs, if the thing has got a crack in it somewhere, then you're better off making hamotzi over a small roll, which is whole, rather than an enormous wedding challah, which is cracked. So you've got to be careful. Don't make it too deep. It's just there so that you know that's your sign. You know that this is the one that the bracha is being made over.
How much challah should one eat?
But as much as you want. I mean,
No,
it's
because
not
the whole
pretty
thing
tasty
is
stuff.
there's a minute. There's a minimum.
Oh, there's a minimum. How much are you supposed to eat? You're supposed to eat what's called a kibetza of challah, which is an egg size. The emphasis in Blinated, maybe tomorrow I'll come in with the volumes because I don't remember off by heart how much that is.
On the size of the bone.
And olive, the problem is like this: that all of the sizes that are used inside of the halacha, even though there are things that are called olive sizes, they're not regular olives. They're very large.
Sized olives. Because it changed.
Everything changed. Things became smaller. Whatever. I mean, it's Emet Hashem. If I remember, then at some point maybe maybe not tomorrow, but we'll just have a class on working out volumes, where they come from, and what each one, how it's represented, and why it's there. And then we could also talk about the numbers, because of course, seeing as how this is Judaism, there is not one uniform amount. There are three different approaches, three main approaches to volumes. One follows somebody called Rav Chaim Noi, which is relatively, that's always smaller. Then there's Rav Moshe Feinstein, who sort of sits in the middle somewhere, and then there's the Chazon Ish, which is normally the most stringent, and whatever. So even with the idea of how much the volumes are, you're going to get three different volumes. Which one is right? Which one is wrong? They're all right. That's for sure. The question is which one to follow. Maybe Emet Hashem at some point we can look into that as well. Anyway, you make hamotzi. Did you want to ask something?
Yes,
I don't know. I wasn't sure if you were holding your hand up, supporting yourself, or.
This hand needs a lot of altitude.
Okay, go ahead. Go for it.
So, if the purpose is to distinguish the challah, do you have to make a cut, or can you do some other kind of means of branding it?
Well, I mean, in theory, I suppose you could really do what you want. You could put a post-it note on it, or you could ask the person who's making the challahs to etch into it before it's baked. 1, 2. This just seems to be the simplest way of doing it, I think. Good. Okay.
Yes.
Now that you've had your bread, now you can talk again. What's going to go? The Suda? I mean, the Suda, it's a meal. It's Hashem. There's certain things that we need to be concerned about over here. There is a custom to eat fish on Shabbos, right? It's a Kabbalistic concept. There are some very basic ideas over the word fish in Gematria. In Hebrew is dag, daled gimel. In Gematria, daled is 4 and gimel is 3. Number 7. So Shabbat being the 7th day of the week, we eat fish because the Gematria matches up. Why we eat, chopped liver, I don't know, because the Gematria doesn't match up. Why we eat cholent and gala and all kinds of, delicacies like that, I don't know. Whatever.
Don't let them come out of the Yiddish.
Yeah, it's like one of those esoteric gematrias that you take away the number you first thought of and add in your shoe size and multiply it by 0, and then you'll get to whatever you'll get to, right? It's whatever. It's what's the Indian? The Indian is like this. There's a concept of eating fish. Why do we eat fish? Because according to the Kabbalistic tradition, when the Mashiach comes, the Mitzvah Hashem should be very soon. But when the Mashiach comes, one of the things that will be served up at what's called Sudas HaMashiach, the meal that's going to be, the Mashiach is going to give us, is something called the Leviathan, a fish of some kind. Some enormous fish that's got, mythical...
Leviathan?
Yeah.
How does it in Hebrew?
Leviathan.
Leviathan,
So Shabbat is Me'ein Olam Haba. It's a taste of the world to come. Right, as we spoke about at the beginning of all of this, which means that we eat fish. It's as if we're connecting into the concept of the Messianic era when we keep Shabbat and we eat the fish. Now, some places, some customs are to eat fish only on Friday night. Some customs eat the fish by the Hasidim. It's a very big thing to eat fish at all 3 meals. If you're not a big fish fan, nothing's going to happen to you, if you don't eat fish on Shabbat. If the only thing you get upstairs at 80 or 120, the only thing that they can pin on you is that you didn't eat fish on Shabbos, you're in good shape. You really are. Methinks that there's going to be a pretty long list of other things that are going to come first, but whatever, it's just my opinion. The thing is like this: fish and meat are spiritually an explosive combination. They're not good, they're not healthy. Fish and meat, when they're eaten together, are a source of what's called tzarat, which is a spiritual ailment. And subsequently, we have to be very careful not to eat fish and meat together. So what will happen is like this. Normally, the first course will be fish. After the first course, everything gets cleared away. You can't use the same plates and the same cutlery without washing them first. If you wash them in between, then there's no problem with using them for meat afterwards. But otherwise, you shouldn't be putting meat onto utensils that have used fish and haven't been cleaned in the meantime. And there is a custom to clean out your mouth. Now you can do that either by eating bread, a little bit of challah. If you're really pedantic, I guess you can go and use mouthwash, go to the bathroom and use mouthwash. But there is a very famous custom, which is to drink a l'chaim in between the fish and the meat. That is simply a means of cleaning out your mouth in order to not have the feet in the mish. I'll try that again, even though no one actually seemed to realize that wasn't said quite correctly. But not to have the meat and the fish, meat, I guess pun intended, in your mouth. Again, if you're like me and you don't drink alcohol, so
You don't drink.
no,
Yiddish?
I don't like.
Single malt?
Sorry,
Single malt?
I don't know how to break this to you. Gosh,
Well, remember, you don't need
This is-
drink anything that's hot either. So.
yeah, this is going to get. This is. I was just going to say this is even worse than not drinking hot drinks. I don't.
I'm walking out.
I don't like alcohol very much, which is great for
Rather
Purim
discouraged.
because it says on Purim you're supposed to drink more than you normally drink.
Yeah.
One
Which
shot.
for me, I can drink two glasses of wine and I'm
You're
done. Normally, I'm
drunk
pretty
already.
high by then as well. It's like, whatever, So eat some challah if you want. I can handle a little bit of sweet liquor, but that's about all I can take. It's not.
Williams?
No, that's
I'll
far
put
too
cooler.
far too grown up. Maybe like some
Switzerland, if you want.
some cherry herring or something. That's about as far as it goes. But that's where the minhag comes from. That's where the custom comes from. Like I mentioned once, I think it's a very, very beautiful custom amongst the Hasidim that before they eat each course on Shabbat, they say the words Lechavod Shabbos Kodesh, Lechavod Shabbat Kodesh, which means that they're doing this in order to honor the Shabbos. They're not just eating this because they're hungry, but they're eating it because they want this to be a dimension of their Shabbos experience. It's a very, very beautiful idea. Many women, when they prepare, you know what, that was very chauvinistic. I'm sorry, Mummy, I apologize. I really do. If you weren't here, I wouldn't have made any kind of a correction. But many people, many people, when they are preparing their Shabbos food, they will do the same thing. Right? They'll as they begin the preparations for the Shabbos food, they'll say L'chavod Shabbos Kodesh. They're doing this, and it's as if they're adding in that special spice. That Shabbos spice is going to be added in through their kavanah, through their intent to make this solely in order to honor Shabbat. It's a very beautiful idea. It really is, actually. And I've been in places where where the person who made the Shabbos food has mentioned that, I don't know, this Shabbos something didn't taste as good as it did last Shabbos because they got away with that, right? Because they forgot to say L'chavod Shabbos Kodesh when they were preparing that particular dish. Now, again, I can't taste the difference, but they can. They feel that it's not there. It's a very beautiful idea. It really is. This idea of physically being aware of the fact that it's Shabbos the whole time. And so we're going to eat, that's a very physical thing to do, but we're going to elevate that. We're going to say, L'chavod Shabbos Kodesh, if you do it, you do it, and if you don't, you don't. But you should definitely, that's what you should be thinking. Yeah.
Is that in a siddur, or does it precede Kiddush?
No. What you do is when you get given, your fish, you would just mumble L'chavod Shabbos Kodesh. If you're not 100% sure what you're saying, you sort of and most people look at you and say, "Wow, this guy's really, he's really frum."
It's
huh?
more of a minhag, right?
It's only a minhag. It's not. It doesn't have any roots whatsoever in halacha, and it's not something that you have to do. But the idea, again, even if you don't say the words, the idea of doing it is something very beautiful. It really is. And the idea of thinking it, at least, you should think to yourself that I'm drinking this soup now because this is, part of my Shabbos. I'm going to elevate this. It's going to be a Shabbos experience. It's something very special.
My grandmother used to burn a little bit of the dough.
Oh, taking challah.
Yeah.
Taking challah from the challah. It's a little bit complicated. When you we spoke about this the other week, no? But when you make enough dough. So you need to take, it's called being mafresh challah. You need to take off a little bit, and that challah can't be used for anything. There's a bracha that's recited over it, and then it's normally burnt up inside of the oven, and it manages to smell out the whole house, actually. What my wife does is that she takes the dough and she wraps it up in silver foil, and then she burns it on the burner. And so I don't know what's going on in there, but apparently that's okay as well. So so you've had your fish, you've made your you've made your break between the fish. So you've drunk something, or you've eaten your challah, whatever it is. Normally, in most frum homes on Shabbos, there are some very beautiful customs. The idea of singing Zmirot.
Yeah, why do we sing Zmirot?
We sing Zmirot because what are we doing? We're, again, just to keep ourselves completely tapped into the idea that this is Shabbos and it's not a regular meal over here. And all of the Zmiros that have been written, some of them are very, very beautiful. They were written by the greatest, they're called paitanim. A paitan is somebody who writes liturgical poems, right? The Zmiros and tefillahs and all kinds of things that we say. And they've been written by some of the greatest paitanim in Jewish history. And the tunes, different tunes. You go to different places, they have different tunes. If you go to Sephardi homes, they have Sephardi tunes. If you go to Ashkenazi homes, they have Ashkenazi homes. If you go to Yekisha homes, they use Prussian marching songs because, and then you've got to get up and march around the table and whatever. I mean, it's very beautiful. The other minig, which is something which is very, very fundamental, is to talk about spiritual matters, right? So there'll be divrei Torah that are said mostly about the parsha, but sometimes it'll be about Shabbos itself. In some homes they have a custom to learn a few halachas to do with Shabbos every week. In every suda they'll learn a little halachas, to keep them tapped in to the idea that you're in Shabbos. It's very beautiful when you've got kids at home, especially smaller kids that are coming home with all kinds of information that they've learned in Cheder. You can give them a little test. Of course, don't expect them to know too much. I was actually spent Friday night. There was a Shabbaton that was being run in Har Nof, and so I was there, and it was for women, so for for young ladies, and so when it came to the singing part, I left together with a person that I was doing it together with. He came out with his son. He had a little son with him, and he starts testing him on the parsha. So he says to him, "What's this week's parsha?" So the kid says, "I don't know." So he says, "Well, is it Parshas Mishpatim?" So the kid says, "Yeah." So he says, "No, it's not." He says, "It's Parshas Chaye." So the kid thinks, and then he says, "Chaye Avram." So his father says, "No, it's not. It's Chaye Sora." He says, "Who dies in this week's Parsha?" So he says, "Sora Menu, Sora dies." So he says, "Yes, that's right. Who else?" So he thinks, and then he says, "Yitzchak dies as well." And at Baruch Hashem, at that point, we got called back in again because I don't know what was this was going from bad to worse. So I have something that I learned from my father, which I try doing with my kids, is that I don't when it comes to I don't test my kids too hard on all of this stuff. What they know, and if they get it right, then it's great, and if they don't, it's nicht gefährlich, really. It's fine. They'll end up growing up. They'll know what the parsha is. They'll be able to read it on the calendar. It's fine. It's just, but it's a very beautiful idea. Just to, everything is running according to Shabbos time. So you talk a little bit about Shabbos, and you talk a little bit about the parsha, and you sing. It's family time, right? It's a great opportunity to be able to spend time together with your family. Most people are pretty busy during the week, so you don't get to see family so much. Right, on Shabbos, they're there. It's great. Sit around at the table. The little kids tend to go drifting off, and then you're left with the older kids, and it's a very beautiful experience. It really is. Out comes the soup. Again, there are different customs about what you put in your soup, what you don't put in your soup. Ashkenazim have customs of putting kanelech in their soup, which are little round matzah balls. Somebody once explained to me that the reason that we eat round matzah balls, it's a cycle of life, the cycle of the week, that we've got to the end of the week and then we start again. There's no real beginning and no real end. If you ask me the real reason we eat kanelech is because they're delicious. I once heard from Rav Twersky in Milwaukee. He said that when he was a kid, he said that there was a big debate. His father was known as the Chernobyl Rebbe, I think, in Milwaukee, and he said that in his father's base of medrash, there's a big debate one Shabbos morning about why we eat kugel, potato kugel, the origins of eating potato kugel, this custom and that custom, and like this and like that. And finally, Rabbi Twersky said to them, he says, "Tell me," he says, "is potato kugel good?" And everyone said, "Yeah, it's delicious." He says, "That's why we eat it." That sounds like enough of a reason to me, I think. But all different things come out, soup, there'll be kanelech, there might be kreplech, there might be all kinds of bits of vegetables, and here in Israel, if you get really lucky, there might even be some chicken in your chicken soup. You never know, right? And after the soup normally comes out the main course, again, in between courses, singing, divrei Torah, the main course. Again, whatever you're being served, that's what you're being served. Different families have different customs. There's a famous story about the fellow who just got married, and he comes home, and every night his wife prepares him a beautiful supper, and every night he says at the end, he says, "Thank you so much." He says, "It was very nice." He says, "But it's not like my mother used to make." And she's trying, and she tries different recipes, and she does different things, and every night it's exactly the same reaction. Anyway, one day she puts on the supper, and she's so upset. She's like cooking this supper, and she's so upset. She phones up her mother, and she starts talking with her mother at great length, and she's crying. And finally, mother says it's going to be okay. And of course, by the time she gets back to the dinner, it's a little overdone, to say the least. Anyway, at that moment, her husband walks in. She doesn't have any other alternative, so she serves her husband, and at the end of the meal he says, "That's how my mother used to make it." So different customs for different people, whatever is whatever's acceptable. Once you're done, once the main course is done, so then dessert comes out. Now dessert is an interesting thing because dessert may require a new bracha made over it, depending on what you're eating. Normally, under normal circumstances, everything we've eaten throughout the meal is going to be covered by the hamotzi blessing. By the hamotzi blessing. The problem is anything that you would not normally eat together with bread is going to require its own blessing.
So why don't we make a bracha on the, like, for example, if we have mango vodka or something like that?
How on earth did you get to mango vodka?
No, I'm just giving you a random example. As in, would you make a sheker call over that?
That was very revealing. You know that. I mean, of all the drinks to come up with, you come up with mango
I
vodka.
just made it up on the spot. It's coming out to the store soon. Lean out there.
That was very, very debauched of you. No, in drinks you don't make another bracha over drink. The only bracha that you make a drink over, if it's not Shabbos, is when you're going to drink some wine.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, the Borei Pri HaGefen that you made at the beginning, when you made Kiddush, is going to cover any wine that you're going to drink during the meal as well. But you don't have to make any bracha over any drinks that you're going to drink, even mango vodka, although it does sound like maybe you should say Tfilas Haderech before you drink it, which is the prayer that you recite when you're going on a journey. But when you get to dessert, though, because dessert is food that you would not normally eat together with bread, it's a big halachic question mark. So, what have we got? We've got all different kinds of opinions over here. Let's start with the easy stuff. Anything which is not mazonis. So if you've been given fruit or you're being given ice cream, then you should make a shahakol or you should make a borei pri eitz over what it is that you've just been given. Bananas are interesting. I think we spoke about this once, no? Banana sandwiches. If you eat banana sandwiches, then you should not make an additional bracha over a banana when you come to eat it for dessert, because you eat it together with bread. Often you'll eat it together with bread. If you don't eat banana sandwiches, then you would.
What is a banana sandwich?
A banana sandwich is normally. I tell you what. But what the origin of banana sandwiches is simply that somebody once had squishy bananas that no one was going to touch, and they sort of like squeezed them out of their rather
Right, that's enough information already.
peel
Yeah.
and spread them on a piece of bread and
Thank
try to
you.
convince their kids into eating it, saying it's a sandwich, and that's the origin of the banana sandwich.
What about the cake?
Cake is a machloikis amongst the various authorities. What you do with cake, whatever you do, it's going to be okay. According to some authorities, you need to recite a borei minei mazonos when you eat cake inside of dessert. According to some authorities, you don't, because cake is similar enough to the bread that was eaten, even though you wouldn't eat together with bread. Nevertheless, it's considered similar enough, so you don't have to make a bracha. I'm telling you, whatever you do, you have who to rely upon, which means if you make a bracha over the bread, over the cake, that's fine. If you don't make a bracha over the cake, that's also fine. Yeah.
If you have on a plate 2 servings, one, say mazonos and a shakol, do you eat a piece of the mazonos before you say shakol on the second piece, or do you?
Okay,
Maybe say both.
you're being very sneaky over here, right? If you're going to make a bracha over the mazonos, then you should begin with the mazonos first, and then you should make a bracha over. Let's say you've got cake and ice cream, right? Then you should make the bracha over the shahakol over the ice cream.
What's with the ice cream? Isn't it
What's with ice cream?
glacier?
No, parma.
Oh, soy ice
No. Here in Israel, the chicken is parav and the ice cream is milchik.
cream.
No, parav ice cream or sorbet. Whatever, I'm sorry if there are purists over here who shudder at the idea of eating parav ice cream, non-dairy ice cream, then sorbet will do, right? If you're going to make a bracha over the cake, then you should make borei minei mazonos, and then you should make a shahakol over the ice cream.
After you take.
First you eat from the cake,
Yeah. Okay.
and then once you've swallowed from the cake, you make a bracha of shahakol over the ice cream, and you should do that. Hold on a second. If you are not going to make a bracha over the cake, then you should begin by making a bracha over the ice cream, and then eat the cake afterwards.
Thank you.
I've
Yes.
got a really good question about brachot. That just
Oh, really?
Quickly.
I want to see what your definition of a really good question is.
It's an amazing question. Incredible
Amazing.
question.
Okay,
With
that's
Shavuot,
Yes.
one course is pasta, one course is, let's say, a pastry of some kind. Do you have to make a different bracha for each course?
No. When you're eating a meal, once you've made a bracha over a particular kind of food, you don't have to make a bracha again. Which means that, let's say your first course was, I don't know, some kind of a mazonis, some kind of a stuffed, some whatever, right? Some pastry stuffed with something, and you make a mazonis over that, and then the next course that comes out is pasta, then you don't have to make another mazonis over that. It's considered to be, you're sitting at the same meal, and it's one bracha is going to cover all the mazonises that you're going to eat. So much for your amazing question.
Oh no. Sorry.
Oh, dessert, right? So, okay, so once we got to that's dessert, that's taken care of. You make a bracha, again, like I said, if you make a bracha over the mazonis, that's good. If you don't, that's also good. But for the other things, you do have to make a bracha. If you're going to eat fruit, if you're going to eat ice cream, you need to make a bracha over it. Just one thing you need to know about fruit is that it's better to make a bracha over a whole piece of fruit rather than cut up pieces of fruit. So let's say, for example, you've got on your plate segments of orange and a whole apple. Or if you prefer, cut up apple and a whole orange. Or if you prefer, you get the idea, yeah? It's better to make a bracha over the whole fruit. It's better to make a bracha over the apple, Bori Priya 8, take a bite out of that, and then if you want to eat the segments of orange afterwards, to do that. Again, we're coming round again to this idea of making brachas over things which are whole, take precedence over making brachas over things which are already cut up. Chashivas, yeah, something is considered to be more important.
Also with
nullifies
boxing it?
chab-
Sorry? Nullifies?
gefilte fish.
It nullifies gefilte. Yes. Well, somebody told me on Shabbos actually that there were two yeshivas in Bnei Brak many years ago, going back into time. What was known as there was it's called Tkufat Tzena. There were all kinds of rationing over here, food rationing. There wasn't very much to eat, and one of the yeshivas was financially better off than the other one, and the practical repercussion of that was that the bracha that was recited over the gefilte fish, because the one that had more fish in it, they made a shahakol over it, and the other one, which was made mostly of crumbs, breadcrumbs and all kinds of bits and pieces found in the kitchen, and a little bit of fish, over that they made a mazonis. Now today, Baruch Hashem, most people don't have to, grapple with these kinds of issues, but whatever. Okay, I think we're going to stop over here, Mitzvah Hashem. We're talking, tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, we've got to talk about benching a little bit, and then we'll start talking about the Shabbos day, I guess.